You are almost asleep when it arrives. Something you said in 2009. A door you pushed when it clearly said pull. A name you got wrong in front of people who are now strangers. It comes back with no warning and no reason, in full detail, and your whole body reacts before you have finished remembering it. You physically wince. In the dark, alone, at something nobody else on Earth has thought about in 15 years. Most people call this a glitch, a pointless loop. Evidence that their brain has decided to torture them for sport. It is none of those things. That memory was flagged, on purpose, by a system that decided it was more important than almost everything else that happened to you that year. And once you understand what it thought it was protecting, the wince starts to make a strange kind of sense. So why would your brain choose to keep this and let 1,000 better days dissolve? Start with a simple question. What actually makes a memory permanent? Because most of what happens to you does not survive. You have no idea what you ate 3 Tuesdays ago. Whole weeks of your life have been quietly deleted, and nothing was lost by deleting them. Your memory is not a recording, it is a triage system, constantly deciding what is worth the storage, so something has to mark the ones that stay. At the University of California, Irvine, a neuroscientist named James McGaugh spent decades working out what that marker is. His finding, in simple terms, is that emotional arousal at the moment of an event physically strengthens how that event gets stored. When something makes your heart rate spike, your body releases stress hormones, and those hormones act on the amygdala, which in turn tells the memory systems to press harder. Not to record more accurately, to record more durably. And there is one experiment that shows this with unusual clarity. Working with McGaugh, a researcher named Larry Cahill gave participants a beta blocker, a common blood pressure drug called propranolol that blunts the effect of adrenaline in the body. Then he showed them a story with an emotionally upsetting section in the middle. Normally, people remember that upsetting middle far better than the mundane beginning. That is the whole effect. But in the group given the drug, that advantage disappeared. They remembered the emotional part no better than the boring part. The event was identical. The emotion was still felt. But with the chemical amplifier switched off, the memory did not get stamped. So emotion is not just something you feel about a memory. It is part of the machinery that decides whether the memory exists at all. Now the real question. Why does social embarrassment count as an emergency? Because that is what your body treated it as. The blush, the heat in your face, the stomach drop, the sudden hyper-awareness of your own hands. That is a stress response. The same family of response you would have if a large animal walked into the room. Nothing was going to hurt you, so why the alarm? The psychologist Mark Leary at Duke University proposed an answer that reframes the whole thing. He argued that human self-esteem is not really a measure of how good you are, it is a gauge. He called it a sociometer, and its job is to monitor one specific variable at all times. How much do the people around me value keeping me? Under that model, the feelings you call embarrassment or shame are not evaluations of your worth, they are readings, a sudden drop on the dial, and the drop is not there to make you feel bad, it is there to make you notice, instantly, that your standing may have just changed. Now apply the ancestral maths. In the group you evolved in, your standing was not an abstraction. It determined whether people shared food with you in a bad month, whether anyone watched your children, whether you were still inside the circle when winter came. A serious loss of standing was not humiliating, it was dangerous. So a mistake in front of others was genuinely worth an alarm. And by McGaugh's mechanism, an alarm means hormones, and hormones mean the memory gets stamped in hard, which is exactly what happened to you in 2009. Your body could not tell the difference between a social error that might get you excluded from the only group available to you and saying goodbye to a bus driver who was not listening. It ran the ancient procedure either way. Spike the hormones, flag the file, keep this one forever. But that only explains why the memory was created. It does not explain the part that actually torments you, which is that it never fades. And for that, there are 2 more pieces. The first is almost funny once you see it. In 2000, the psychologist Thomas Gilovich and his colleagues ran a study that has become famous. They asked university students to put on a deliberately embarrassing t-shirt and walk into a room full of other students. Afterwards, they asked the wearers to estimate how many people had noticed the shirt. The wearers guessed roughly twice as many as actually had. Gilovich called this the spotlight effect, the consistent, systematic overestimation of how much other people are paying attention to you. And when you sit with the number, it is quite something. Even in a situation deliberately engineered to be conspicuous, most of the room did not register it at all, because everyone else in that room was busy running their own version of this, monitoring their own standing, replaying their own 2009. So the witnesses you are still cringing in front of, the people whose judgment your body is still reacting to, mostly did not encode the event. It never got flagged for them, because for them it was not an emergency. It was Tuesday. You are the only person maintaining this file. And maintaining is exactly the right word, which brings us to the last piece, and the strangest one. For most of the 20th century, the assumption was that memories consolidate once and then sit there, fixed, like a photograph in a drawer. In 2000, a neuroscientist named Karim Nader, working at New York University with Joseph Ledoux, tested that assumption and found something that changed the field. When a memory is retrieved, it does not simply get read, it becomes temporarily unstable and then it has to be stored again. Nader's experiments showed that if you interfere with that restorage process, you can weaken or alter a memory that had been stable for a long time. Recall is not playback, recall is editing. Now think about what you have been doing to that memory for 15 years. Every time it surfaces and you wince, you retrieve it. And because your body reacts, the same stress hormones McGaugh identified show up again at the moment of restorage. You are not just remembering the embarrassment, you are restamping it, with emotion, again. The memory is sharp because you have been sharpening it, and there is a reason it keeps surfacing in the first place. In the 1920s, a psychologist named Bluma Zygarnik noticed that waiters could recall unpaid orders in detail, but forgot them almost immediately after payment. Unfinished business stays active in the mind. Completed business gets released. An embarrassing moment is, almost by definition, unfinished. There was no resolution. Nobody told you it was fine. The social question your alarm raised, "Am I still all right with these people?" was never actually answered. So the file stays open, and an open file gets reopened. That is the full mechanism. An alarm that flags the memory, a monitoring system that cares enormously about your standing, an audience that mostly did not notice, and a recall process that restamps the thing every time it returns. Now look at where you are running all of this. Your sociometer was calibrated for a group of maybe 150 people, people you would know for your entire life. In that world, the tracking made sense, because those relationships were permanent and repairable. If your standing dropped, you would see those same faces tomorrow and the day after, and you could actually mend it. Your embarrassment now is almost never about those people. It is about a stranger in a shop, a colleague who left the company, someone in a video call whose name you never learned. Your ancient equipment is spending its resources tracking your standing with people who will never affect your life in any way, and who forgot the entire incident before they reached the car park. And there is no repair available. That is the part that keeps the file open. You cannot go back and fix your standing with a person you will never see again, so the system cannot mark the matter closed, so the memory stays live and keeps presenting itself for review, forever, usually around midnight. So what do you do with that? Nothing dramatic, but it does change what the wince means. It is not evidence that you are humiliating, it is not proof that people are still thinking about it, because the research says with some confidence that they are not. It is a 15-year-old alarm from a device that was built for a village, going off about a stranger, and getting re-recorded every single time you flinch at it. The event lasted 4 seconds. You have been storing it, retrieving it, and restoring it ever since. And in a strange way, that is the most reassuring fact in all of this, because it means the memory's power was never coming from the event. It was coming from the maintenance. You are almost asleep when it arrives, and now you know what it actually is, not a punishment, and not a verdict. Just an old system checking one more time whether you are still safe with people who stopped thinking about you a very long time ago.